Christmas will be here before you know it, and it's time to start building all of your yard signs. Today I'm going to show you exactly how to make this Nutcracker. Hey everyone, welcome back to Pawpaw's Workshop. Today's video is all about the Nutcracker. This is the first one of two that I'm going to do to be able to have out in the yard for the Christmas decorations. Now this one is made out of the 1/2-inch foam, and it is going to look great in the front yard with the other decorations that I'm making, preparing for the Christmas season. Today, I want to show you exactly how I built the Nutcracker using the easel software on the Inventables X card. The file that I'm using today for this Nutcracker, I've had saved in the easel software now for several years. Quite frankly, I don't remember where I had received this file. I'm not sure if I had worked this file up through the Google search and then put it into the easel, or if some kind person actually shared this file onto the easel project page. Don't know for sure. But if you do know the answer to that question, please leave me a comment down below so I can give credit where credit is due. This file has worked out really nice to be able to cut out this Nutcracker, and it was a lot of fun to be able to do. This Nutcracker is about 4 feet tall, and quite frankly, you can make it as tall as you want. I just decided because of the foam that I was using, 4 foot was a good size to make. Now because it's 4 foot, obviously that's going to require the tiling operation. Tiling is actually a very simple process to be able to do. In the easel software, you have a tiling option. I'm going to have a workpiece set up showing exactly how to do that. But in today's video, I'm going to show you how to do the tiling in the event that you don't use the tiling operation that easel has to offer. In previous videos, I have shown how to do the tiling. And if you go to the playlist on my channel, under the fan art, you're going to see quite a few different projects where I did the tiling. And you can see exactly step by step how to do it. In addition, you're going to see exactly how to do it today in this video. Now this is the original file. When I opened up easel, the size of this is 24 inches tall by roughly about 8 inches wide. And this is a good foundation to be able to work with because we can actually make it any size that we wish. One of the things that I always like to do on the very first work piece, I have the original file there. And then from there I can add the different work pieces to be able to create the project that I need to actually cut out. The advantage of doing it this way is that if I make a mistake and I actually have to start over, I still have the original file. The worst thing that can happen is make a mistake and lose the file completely, and then you're not left with anything to be able to work with. So always get into the habit of having that first work piece with the original file on it, and do not change anything. To size the Nutcracker to the correct size, I'm going to highlight this. And now you notice it's all combined together. I'll take one of these little handles at the corner, then I can stretch it out to the size that I want. And I'm going to bring it up almost to the total 48 inches wide. Next, I want it centered. So I'll come to the Edit menu, scroll all the way to the bottom, center to the material, and it moves the image over to be directly in the center of this material. I now have some of the decisions to make. I want to be able to cut this entire Nutcracker out, and I want the image itself to only cut down 1/8 of an inch. So there's a couple of steps that we need to do in order to do that. Let's take care of the cutout first. On the left side of the screen, select the Apps menu. When the Apps library comes up, scroll down to the Offsetter app, click on that. At this point, you see the image. Now I want to change the distance. I only want to go just a small amount. So I'll do 0.1 of an inch out. And then I want to be able to delete the original. Do not want that. So we'll take the original, uncheck it, and then we'll import it. When I import this in, it comes directly on top of the other piece. It's okay that it's larger than my work area. That's fine. Now this is all highlighted. So take this and move it off to the side. Now one note, if you look at the original object, if I try to uncombine it, it does not uncombine. However, with my new piece where the offset are at, all these pieces are individual. What I want is that outer piece, because that is going to create the cutout. At this point, I could delete this. However, there's a couple more pieces that I want to be able to save, and I'll show you what I'm going to do with those. Other than that, this can be deleted and you don't need it any longer. Take the outline, highlight it, come up to the Edit menu, and we're going to put it in place. Hit center to the material, and it places it exactly where it needs to be. Earlier, we had set the size of the material and the thickness of the material, but we didn't change the bit. So now I'm going to select a bit. This is an 1/8 inch straight bit that we're going to use to be able to do the carving and the cutout. Now it's time to set the depth of the cut. I have everything highlighted right now, so I'm just going to reduce this down to the 1/8 inch. So now I have everything set at an 1/8 inch. What I need to do though is move my Nutcracker out of the way and just leave the cutout line. I'll highlight that. I'll change the depth of the cut so it cuts all the way through. Now right now I have tabs. You notice that. I'm going to get rid of the tabs later. But for now, let's highlight my Nutcracker, select Edit, and bring it back to the center of the material. Let's take a break from the computer work and let's go to the foam itself, and we'll get it cut to the size. So I need my foam cut as far as the width, 18 inches wide, and the height of this is already 48 inches. So really all I need to do is just make one long cut. Unfortunately, I only have a 24 inch T-square to be able to cut this. So we'll just do this in 2 sections, not a big deal. Not wanting to actually cut the tabletop itself, I score this almost all the way through, and then just take the knife and just cut that last little piece. And yes, I could put a little sacrificial piece of foam down on the workbench and save this step, but this really doesn't take but a minute to be able to do. The next step, however, is critical. You need to remove this plastic film off of the foam. Now this plastic film is actually on both sides, and you want to be able to get it completely off because this will cause a problem when you're carving. Remove it, discard it, and then you don't have to worry about it. At the CNC machine, I'm using the glue and the tape method to be able to hold down a sacrificial piece of the foam. Now the foam that I'm using is just a 1/4 inch or 5 millimeter thick foam. You also notice I only have 2 pieces of tape down. You don't need tons of tape. This is plenty, and I only need 1 thin bead of the CA glue by Starbond to be able to hold it down. Do not overdo it. And the same applies with the accelerator. It takes very little accelerator, which I've already sprayed on this piece, and you just slip it in place. Press it down, hold it for a few seconds, and you're set. Do not overcomplicate using the glue and the tape method. So how do we go about doing the actual tiling operation? If you look at this dotted line right here, that basically shows you the cutting area of the machine itself. So you know you cannot go any further than that 29 inches. And quite frankly, I don't like to go that far. The way I have my machine set up, I'm not able to quite go 29 inches because this is from the machine 0 position. So what I want to do is look in this 24, 25, 26 inch area right in here. And I want to find an area that has the least amount of paths to be able to cross. And it looks like if I go right through here, I've actually got quite a few. If I come through this belt area, again, I would have quite a few things to be able to interact with. But if I come through right here at the 25 inch line, that looks pretty good. In fact, one of the things that I can actually do is highlight and move him up just ever so slightly. You can see at the 25 inch, all I have is the arm, there's the body, there's nothing in the middle at all, and then just the arm and the body on this side. So that looks like a really good place. So 25 inches is going to be the area that I am tiling. So at this point, I have 2 tiles, tile 1 and tile 2. Or a better way to look at it is I'm tiling the bottom half of the Nutcracker and then the top half of the Nutcracker, with the 25 inch line being the magic number. That's where it splits between the 2 tiles. Back at the foam board, I have marked the 25 inches. And that's very important to have that identified, so now it matches the project board, matches what's in the computer. I need to mask off the top portion so that I can only carve from the 0 point at the bottom of the feet up to the 25 inches. To do that, all I need is a simple rectangle that will be large enough to cover the top half of my Nutcracker. I also want to put a reference mark in the computer exactly the way that I did on the foam board. So I'm going to go back up to the Shapes menu and grab a rectangle. I'm going to make this shape, we'll bring it up here so that you can see it, and I'm going to make this shape 1 inch long and 1/4 inch high on the y-axis. And then I'll position that right at the 25 inch line. Easiest way to do that is to use the coordinates. I have the bottom left hand corner identified, so I need the x-axis to be at 0 and the y-axis at the 25. And that moves it directly to the point that it matches exactly with the actual foam board and now the computer. So these must match. The foam board's at 25 inches. This reference point on the computer is 25 inches, and that gives me the precise measurements that I need to be able to move this from tile 1 to tile 2. Next, we need to take our rectangle and mask off the top portion of the Nutcracker. So I'm going to slide that right over to that same point. To make sure that the masking is exactly where it needs to be, I need to use the coordinate system. And the easiest way to do that is this section right here. I want to have it the bottom left hand corner. I'll type in on the x-axis 0 and then on the y-axis 25 inches. And you can see it move down ever so slightly. That now gives me the precise location that it will carve the bottom half and stop at the 25 inches. Which will match the project board exactly with my reference point on the foam itself. This is what it's going to look like when it carves, only the bottom half. Now the Nutcracker on the right will be masked off or deleted. It's time to put the project board now onto the CNC machine. And again, I'm using the glue and the tape method to be able to secure the project board to the auxiliary waste board, which in itself is foam also. This allows me to cut all the way through the project board and not damage the waste board underneath my sacrificial piece. You notice I'm only putting 2 pieces of tape down. That's all that's necessary. You have no reason to overdo it. Same thing applies to the Starbond glue. 1 thin bead on each piece of tape is all that's necessary. Again, don't overdo this either. Doesn't take a lot to be able to hold this project board down. As far as the accelerator, it takes very little. That's all that's necessary. If you put too much of the accelerator, quite frankly, it takes longer for the glue to actually dry. Then I position the project board right at my 0, 0 position, which matches exactly what's in the computer to what's on the CNC machine itself. Press this down in place to hold it, and the glue dries almost instantly. I went through the checklist and it's now ready to start carving. The one thing that I did not record on camera was the actual speed settings. I set the machine to cut 100 inches per minute using 1 pass. As far as the cutout itself, I did that in 3 passes. And that made it where the carving only took about 12-13 minutes to be able to do all of the cutting. I want to give you a close-up of the actual cutting of the foam board at the 100 inches per minute. This is in real time, and you can see it's doing an excellent job. All of the interior cuts now are done, and it just finished doing the cutout on the left-hand side, and now it's moving over to the right-hand side and doing the cutout. Again, this is going to take 3 passes. I could have probably done it in 2, but I didn't want to be quite that aggressive. So after you cut this bottom section, we need to take and move this space out of the way, and we need to move our Nutcracker down to this area. So this 25 inches right here, this point needs to move down to the 0 position. And how do we do that? Well, if we click this right here, you're going to see at the bottom left hand corner, that is 1.202. If you subtract that from my 25 inches, One of the things that I like to do when I'm carving this is I like to be able to have a little bit of an overlap, because right now we're exactly on the line, and the width of that bit is going to make a difference. It's going to have just a little bit of space. But if I move this up another 1/4 of an inch, it is going to be able to carve everything. So I'm going to take this figure right here and add 0.25 of an inch. So that's 22.295. We're going to add 0.25. So I'm going to put in, as my new number, 22.545. And that's going to move it up just ever so slightly. And now when this carves, we'll zoom in. You notice how this would carve just a little bit more down into these areas. Because at the 25-inch line, we were right here, and now we're just cutting a little bit lower. So that's how you can do an overlap very easily. And then we'll slide this back over to here. We're going to use the top. And again, this is going to be the 0 and 0. And now all of this area is protected, and we're ready to be able to carve. I moved the project board down now to the 25 inches on the 0, work position, which matches exactly what's in the computer. I've gone through the checklist, and now I'm ready to carve. In the checklist, I'm using the last XY0 position, and when I hit carve, it actually goes over and carves that little reference mark. This is a verification that I know is exactly where it needs to be. I can stop the machine if it's not exactly where it needs to be at this point. I'm very pleased with the position, and it's going to continue to carve the top half of the Nutcracker. Again, this portion is going to take about 10-11 minutes to be able to carve. I also want to show you a close-up of how this cutout is matching up just absolutely perfect. This is what you want to be able to accomplish when you do the tiling. And now it's just finishing up, and as you can see, it's quite messy without the dust boot. But at this point, it's time to remove this. I use a little putty knife to be able to loosen up that tape just a little bit, and then I can lift this off. I'm going to do this from each side so that you can see just how well this glue and tape method holds. It does take a little bit of persuasion, but once you get the tape where it's starting to peel up, then it will come off fairly easy. But this does hold extremely well, as you can see. Now I have to do the same thing at the top. I'll loosen it on this left side. Once I get the tape starting to come loose, then I'll switch over and do the same thing to the other side. At that point, the rest of this will come loose. And that's not bad. You can see it's fairly easy to be able to release, but at the same time, it's very effective in holding this material down. And I love how this turned out. All we need to do now is get it painted. If I go into the next workpiece, I said I was going to show you how the tiling in easel actually works. And you can see when you pull down this menu, it again has two tile sections, tile 1 and tile 2. You also see that solid blue line. That is where it's actually cutting to. See, and you can control where you've had the tile break, and again I have it set for the 25 inches. It also has a 1-inch overlap, because you can see tile 2 is measured at the 24 inches. So this does the exact same thing as what I did using a manual method, but you can just as easy use this method to be able to do your tiling. I think it's very important to understand the manual method so that when you convert over and use the tiling system that's in easel, you'll have a good understanding of exactly what it's doing. The setting for the depth of the cut was absolutely perfect. All I need to do is just lightly push this out, and the piece falls directly out of the waste material. So this worked out real well. There was no damage to the auxiliary waste board, and as a result, there was no damage to the waste board itself. The first step that I do for all of the painting of the foam type signs is to seal the foam on the front and the back completely. That way, if I choose to use spray paint or any paint that may react with the foam itself, having this base coat down prevents that from happening. So this is a good practice to be able to get into. Seal both sides of the foam before you actually start putting the color. And I'm just using a white paint to be able to seal the front and back of this foam. I used my Mega Block standoffs that I've made in a previous video to be able to keep this project board off of my workbench so it allow it to dry both on the front and the back. And if I need to do any little bit of touch up, I can. And if you haven't seen my little rubber band trick to put over the paint can to be able to keep paint out of that track, well, let me show you a good close-up view of this little trick. It really saves the paint can. Once the base coat is all dry, then I'll start with the colors. And I always start with the lightest color first, and I will do all of the yellows in this case over the entire project. Once I finish the yellow, I'll move on to the reds, greens, and blacks. Now I did take 2 coats of the paint for each of the colors to be able to have good coverage so that it was a nice, smooth, even consistency. And I think the end results are absolutely amazing. We even mixed up some special paint just to get some rosy cheeks in there. Well, the Nutcracker is all ready to stand his post outside the house for this Christmas season. Thanks a lot for watching this video on how to make the Nutcracker. It was a lot of fun. And if you like this video, by all means, give me a thumbs up. Don't forget, hit the subscribe button down below. And I look forward to seeing you on the next video. Hey, we gotta go clean up your mess now. You made quite a mess on the CNC machine. Well, I guess that's really not that bad, considering all the cutting that we did. Dust boot? Yeah, dust boot would have helped out a lot.